Good morning, beloved. Can you believe it? Live stream number 12. I never knew that I would make it this far, but I think we're in the slipstream now. Have really been enjoying it. I get a little bit nervous, as I like to say, live streaming is the most difficult job in the world, especially when you're lazy like me and you don't do any preparations. Before we get started, we have a posthumous super chat from yesterday, Mr. Roland S., who says, "Your mods suck." Shout out to you, but you're wrong. we have the best mods in the business. Speaking of which, welcome back, Mr. Overton. We're glad to see you here. He had to step away for the day, and we're very glad to see you back. I think all of the middlemen can agree on that. So, a little blast from the past. I received an email from someone that I was not expecting to receive an email from, Mr. Owen Benjamin. Mr. Owen Benjamin, if you may have recalled from back in the day, I used to, I wouldn't say, we've never met. I wouldn't say that we're friends, we're acquaintances, but he was a huge influence on me of opening me up to see the way the world really works. He was bringing information and knowledge that I had never heard before, and it was quite a slap in the face and started the journey, really is responsible for us here today. Very inspired. So Mr. Benjamin asked me if I would be willing to share his app. He's got an app on the YouTube site as well as the App Store. And let me see if I can get the name of that here. I'm going to try to, what was that? The guy, maybe the apps can drop the name in there. I've already forgotten over there, but I said absolutely. I'll share that with you, and I'd like to see about getting together with him. Maybe we could do something again. I did a live stream with him, or he invited me to be a guest on his stream years ago, and I like what he's doing, and I want to support that. So, shout out to Mr. Benjamin. All right. Let me get the housekeeping here. Get our thing going and see where we're at. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Dean Pickett. Shout out to you, Mr. Dean Pickett. He's kicking us off here. Afternoon, doing a trip with family down to HR in May, Seattle area. Anything we shouldn't miss? Thank you. Yes, I will. Mr. Pickett, contact me, Cody@Wranglerstar.com, and I will give you some personal recommendations. It's a beautiful area. You'll need a couple days, but there's a lot to see. You just couldn't go wrong with that. Before we get started, we have to do it. I dread this more than the cold shower. Lighting of the lantern, it is our custom. It worked for Mr. Rogers, it works for us. Why the lantern? Well, I just like it. The smell of it, the sound of it, it reminds me of my grandfather. I did let it run all day when I was out here working, so I know we're definitely going to be low on fuel. Yes, there it is. Thank you. Beartaria Times. So I'm going to go check that out, look into it. I've had a hard time following Owen. You never know where he's at. He's been canceled off of so many places that the only way I've been able to see his content is from other people that are reposting it. I've seen it pop up on YouTube. I've seen it pop up on TikTok, and it doesn't stay very long. Public enemy number one. Goodness, I guess when you're taking the flak, you're over the target. And that man has showed the courage of a lion and gave up a lot. So hats off to Mr. Benjamin. He's doing it, man. He's doing it. He's got his farm up there in northern Idaho, and he's making it happen. He's a good dude. All right. What's the chance of us not spilling fuel today? I'm always optimistic. Hope is my plan. I don't know that it's happened yet. Even though I have this Safety Sally type of funnel system that is not supposed to be it's not supposed to drip. I don't understand. How can it be? The tank is empty. How can fuel come out all over my thing, all over my chopping block when the tank is empty? I don't understand it. It's my cross to bear. Look at that. There must be, We have, I mean, this is turning into a super fun site right here in front of me. I've got my breakfast getting contaminated. Look at this, goodness. Just look at it. I don't understand. I'm going to go over here and shout. Okay, I got that out of my system. Is the funnel broken? How can this be? How can it be? I'm cursed. I'm cursed. We might have to switch to propane. I mean, this is getting to be a personal safety issue right here. All right, let's see if we can get it out. The trouble's not over yet. I haven't even lit the infernal thing. Well, hopefully we got enough fuel in there. All right, we'll put the cap on. Beartaria Times, that's the app. On the App Store as well as the Google App Store. I don't know about the Google App Store. I don't use Android. I'm not a Philistine. $30 pumps. I've already lost track. All right, here we go. Now we have fuel everywhere. I really should get that face shield. Oh, goodness. I can hear it. It gives me tremendous anxiety. Come on now. Maybe we should come up with a different custom. Maybe we just need a flashlight would be more my speed than this gas breathing monster. I don't remember my grandfather having such trouble with his lanterns. Now it's a personal mission. All right, it is nice to have though. Come on. Okay. Are we still burning? Nothing but the best production around here, gentlemen. You know how it is. Come on. Yeah, you should be afraid, Mama Kitty. Oh, we got it. We got it! I don't think I trust the thing to be here near me. I'm going to put it over here at a safe distance. All right. Excellent. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, what do we have today? I am excited. What is it? We are on day cold. The cold shower was rough this morning. I'll tell you, man. I was bragging yesterday about how I had overcome it and that it was old hat for me. Man, I had a little trouble getting in there tomorrow. You know what? This morning, what really messed me up is my whole. I like systems and I like the routines. You know, I get these routines, and even though they're illogical, I just follow them. They're important to me. They help me with these things. So when I went into week 2 with the Wim Hof exercise method, the breathing thing, well, they mixed it up. What I had been doing is I had been doing my push-ups and the stretching and all that firsthand, getting a good lather up and, getting good and warm. And then it was quite easy to jump into that cold shower. Well, when I opened up the app yesterday, he mixed it up on me. He said, well, you need to take your cold shower first. And I thought, oh, goodness, I haven't really warmed up yet. And it was kind of cold. It's 22 degrees outside. And even when your house is insulated at 22, the cold comes to the glass. It was a bit rough for me. It was a bit of a back set I actually thought I was going to be jumping in the creek, but probably not anytime soon. But I did it. And we must be on day, it's got to be 2 weeks now, and I am absolutely feeling great. The benefits, as I said, are incredible energy. I have not had this much energy since I was in my 20s. But one thing that's interesting that I had noticed is that when 9 o'clock rolls around, man, I just absolutely bonk and crash. The sweet loaf, we have a custom. I read, I saw a video a while back and it was corny and cheesy and all that, but it really hit me. It pulled on my heartstrings so hard. It was something to the fact that said, all those little fingerprints you have around your house, all over, sticky stuff all over the place, and I've complained about that before, all over my computer. And, I don't know about kids. Something about kids is they don't care that their hands have jelly and honey all over them. They touch everything. I'm like, I can't stand that, but it works for them. So you have that, and then little piles of toys and books. And when you're a person that likes neatness and orderly, I'm always chasing around and picking stuff up. But I watched this video and the guy was talking about, all those things that you think you don't like. The fingerprints all over your computer screen, the piles of toys, the kids' books, the little messes, the little shoes all over the place. In just a few years, in just a blink of an eye, those won't be here anymore, and they'll be gone. And trust me, you'll miss them. And having the benefit of me being in kind of a particular situation where my oldest, my boy Jack is 17 now, where I had the ability to to spread them out, which we have. I have a 17-year-old and a 5-year-old. It has helped me put that into perspective because, nobody can tell you nothing. I mean, people will tell you when you're younger, hey, enjoy those moments. Be sure you live for each day. Don't take them for granted because before you know it, they will be gone. And man, that's absolutely true. I talked to Jack now, and we were watching him this morning. He's on competitive debate. He's up with the big boys, and I couldn't believe it. I was just thinking it was just a few years ago. He was just a little kid, and we used to, what I would give to have one of those days back where we used to run the quads and race around the trees and the mud and pull him around behind the old quad at the old homestead on the car, the Jeep hood. And that video was right. Those things are gone, and you can never get them back. And it's the nice thing about having a second go at it is I get to really understand that. And nobody could have told me anything. You just can't relate until you've been through it. But now I try to really savor those moments. And you have to be intentional. You can, the adversary is all about getting us separated from our families. And he'll whisper in your ear. He's very subtle. And he'll make lots of sense. And that's the reason why I've been talking about, and something I've really discovered of late, the importance of acting on your emotion. When you feel something, those feelings turn to thoughts, and those thoughts need to be acted on. That's how God speaks to us. And when that little baby is running around and wanting my attention, and I have things to do and things that are pressing, it's so easy to get out. I know emotionally that I need to see to this. It doesn't matter. None of these videos, none of this channel, the live stream, none of this matters more than sitting down and reading a book with her, or just being with her, just going outside and playing in the snow, whatever that is. But as a man, and especially as a sole provider for your household, you start engaging that thinking. You start engaging that logical mind. And of course, you can reason all that away. There's every reason in the book. And everyone in society and everybody will back you up on it. Yeah, of course, you got to, first things first. You need to take care of these things, take care of your businesses, take care of your house, and then there's time for the kids. No. It's not that way. Yeah, but you have to be very intentional. And I war with that every evening. And so something that I've done, and maybe it'll help you, is that we have a routine in the evening. I shut off the computer at a particular time, and we have tea time. So it's a ritual. It's very fun. I would recommend you do it if you have little kids. I'm not a big tea drinker. I don't particularly enjoy it that much. However, just having that to look forward to and how much she enjoys it. And every evening we have the ritual. We go into the kitchen. She gets the tea bags. I get the pot down. We heat up the water. We do the full service with the cup and the saucer. We pour it. We talk about it. And then we share a book. And a book series, if you have little kids, if you are a parent or a grandparent, it is very, very difficult to find books or literature that's appropriate for kids, that shares your values. You would be surprised if you haven't been in a library of late. If you're an old boomer like me and you grew up in public school and you kind of have an idea, or you think you have an idea of what's in the library and what's suitable for kids, you would be shocked. It's very little of it, if any of it, is suitable. It's almost as if it has been curated to be evil. I don't need to go into details. Use your imagination, but there is all manner of wickedness, and it is all in the children's section. Vampires, zombies, monsters, Jenny has two mamas, etc., etc. I mean, it's even graphic. It's terrible. So if you would like to insulate your family from that and have something that is 100% safe that you can get for cheap, the old Uncle Arthur books are wonderful. That's what we're reading. We have the full set. Those are the ones, you probably saw them in your dentist's office growing up. They're illustrated, they're hardbacked. Every one of them has a very strong moral message that you can have a discussion with afterwards. They're extraordinary books. They're very, very well done and very well written. If you go to Amazon, you go to eBay, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. You can buy a whole set, but have those things and be intentional and sit down and have a ritual and tell those stories, and it's wonderful. It's hard to find. It's hard to find. And the Lamplighter series is good as well. All right, let's jump into it, gentlemen. Goodness, where are we here? We are Tim Caldwell. Thank you for you. Shout out to you. Tim Caldwell says, hey, Mr. W, obviously you were not on the hazmat at the fire department. Thank you. The daily highlight of the day. Actually, I was a tech. I had all that training on the hazmat. I'll tell you the scariest, I think this was the scariest moment of my life where I actually saw my life flash before me, and that was on the hazmat team. So here's how it happened. So I worked as a career firefighter up in Summit County, Colorado. That's at 10,000 feet. That's where it starts. And then the peaks go up to 14,000 plus feet. Our job was to patrol. We ran one of our patrol areas there, or response areas, was the Interstate 80 that came down from the Eisenhower Tunnel. Now, the Eisenhower Tunnel goes through the Rockies, and it's miles long. It's super, super long. And it's a major interstate that runs through there as well. It's such a big tunnel that they actually have their own dedicated fire department in the tunnel with their own engines and everything. So what happens is that they strictly forbid any sort of hazardous materials to be brought through that tunnel. It's just too dangerous. If there was a rollover or a fire, if there's a couple thousand cars in there, you can just imagine if there was a fireball, it would be devastating. It would be a massive loss of life. So the poor truck drivers have to go over a very windy and twisty pass that's difficult to get over and exceedingly steep. Well, most truck drivers are familiar with this, and most people that are going to be in there, they know what they're doing. But every once in a while, you get Southern man in a truck that has never seen a mountain in his whole life, and he finds himself wandering and cutting through these switchbacks with an 80,000-pound semi loaded with gasoline or what have you, and there's always trouble. Southern man doesn't know about Jake brakes, I guess, or how to gear down and not catch his brakes on fire, which inadvertently light his tires on fire, which inadvertently makes him go up and soil his shorts on the truck runaway ramps. I was on the hazmat team. My lieutenant was the lead tech, and I was kind of his right-hand man. What a hazmat team is, we respond to chemical spills, that sort of thing. I've been down, had the special training at the rail cars, and certified for locomotive fires and oil train fire. You know, I did all that stuff. I was heavily involved in that. So we get a call. A gasoline tanker has flipped over on its side, flipped over, and is leaking gasoline out into Lake Dillon, I believe it was, which is the main reservoir for Denver and the area. Big, big problem. And gasoline, of course, is the worst of things. It has the flash points and all that. So we get our hazmat stuff, and we go up there, drive up there, and we're a ways off, and we're looking at it with binoculars, like, okay, sure enough, there it is. There's a big gas tanker. It's laying on its side, and fuel is glugging out of it. It's just running across the street, maybe a half inch or so deep, but a ton of fuel. Now, I don't know that they would do things like this day, and I'm really shocked that what we did, it was super irresponsible and super dangerous. But, Colorado, I found it's a bit of the Wild West out there. It's still kind of good old boy. There was definitely good old boy then where, we'll just figure it out. So here was our plan. Gas is running across the street. all of the engines and everything is staged a long ways back, and we're looking at this. How do we deal with this? What do we get? How are we going to do it with this? Well, we figured what we had to do is we've got to offload the fuel. And because everything was all banged up and the valving and everything to unload was all underneath and who knows, unusable, damaged, broken, the idea was we were going to go into this thing, crawl up on top of it, core drill it with a drill, and then get a hose in there and start offloading this fuel before the whole thing, all of it was lost and contaminating the water supply, right? So here's the plan. I still can't believe it. Sean and I put our bunker gear on, just normal firefighting gear, and the chief decided what we'll do is first thing we need to do is we need to get that battery disconnected. He was really concerned about the battery. Those trucks have, I don't know if they're 24, 48 volt big batteries, starter batteries, and that was exposed there on the side of the tractor, and he wanted us to disconnect those batteries and then do the core drilling. So we got the bolt cutters. I had the bolt cutters with my lieutenant, and the plan was we would start walking up there, and then the engine behind us would start just covering us with foam. Now, foam is used to suppress chemical spills, fuel spills, oil spills in place of water. It displaces the vapors, and I'm not going to go into details. So we're walking along, and they're just spraying us with foam. We're just covered with foam, just trudging along. And then we get into the fuel. We're walking in the fuel. We've got our air tanks on because you couldn't even breathe in that environment. It was just, there was so much gas. Finally, we get up to the engine or up to the tractor, and I've got the bolt cutters. And Sean takes the cover off the batteries. And the plan is, I still can't believe we did this. The plan is to take these bolt cutters and to cut the main lead. Now, why we didn't just unbolt the ground was beyond me. But what we did was, I don't know, I decided to cut the hot lead. Well, I was up, and on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to cut, and they're big cables. I'm going to cut this thing, right? Well, I pull on it, and I'm in bunker gear. It's difficult. I can't even see. I've got foam all over my face. I pull on these bolt cutters, and something happened where I arc that battery across the frame or a bracket or something, and just a massive sparks just went like this in the midst of all this gasoline and foam and everything. I almost vacated my soul when that happened. I don't even have the words, and so did my lieutenant who was next to me. Fortunately, it did not ignite. I still can't believe we did that. Anyway, we got the battery disconnected, we got a ladder out there, crawled up on top, and then the perils weren't over then. And then I just remember we core drilled about a 4-inch hole, maybe it was a 5, 6, big hole, core drilled a hole, or a couple holes in the top of that thing. I believe it was baffled, or I don't remember. It was so many of those things that I ran on. But we survived, lived to tell another day. I don't know how, but that's the way it was. That was I forgot about that story. That was a scary, scary time. Goodness. We have a super chat from Mr. Aiden Leach. Shout out to you, Aiden. Thank you for your generosity. It's good to see you here, Aiden. Aiden also writes another super chat. He says, remember, stand by your rights and stay united. Together, the people are strong from the UK. By the way, we are beyond help. Yeah, man, it's rough what's going on in the UK. It's terrible. The UK, the poor UK people are so polite that your politeness was taken advantage of. And it's a similar thing that happened to Canada. The Canadians are very easygoing and polite, and pretty soon they're waking up and realizing that their government, they live in a tyranny, and they're beyond the point of return. And not having your own natural resources, that's rough too. It's difficult to be an island nation. Yeah, it's sad. I would not want to be in the UK right now. It wouldn't be, this is hard to even imagine, but you know how migrants have left Cuba for years to escape that tyranny? It could be in our lifetime where people will need to escape the UK in homemade boats to escape the tyranny of their very own government. Can you imagine that? The land of the Magna Carta? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But that's the way it's going. Shout out to you, UK, but it's your own fault. We have a super chat from Eric Miller. Shout out to you, Eric. And Eric writes, what do you lubricate the leather flap with on the lantern? What leather flap? Is there a leather flap on the lantern? I'm not familiar with that. Lubricate the leather flap. Are you talking, was there a leather gasket in the old ones of the generator? I don't know. I don't know what that means. What do you lubricate the leather flap with on the lantern? Man, I'm at a loss. It's probably obvious. I just can't see it. Shout out to you anyway. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you. We have a super chat and 2-year member. Shout out to you, Mr. Roger One Bubble, who writes, the solution to pollution is dilution. Yeah, that's what we used to say. The solution to pollution is dilution. And that's what we ended up doing is once we got that fuel stopped, that leak stopped, I think it was dual chamber, if I remember right. Now, here's a fun fact. Did you know that milk trucks, do you know what a baffle is in a tank? You will find out very quickly if you ever try to drive a truck that is non-baffled with a half a load of water. You know how water sloshes? You ever carried buckets to get it sloshing? And, you know, it can move you around. Well, some trucks are not baffled. Milk trucks, for example, are not baffled. Milk trucks are not baffled because they never transport them half full. It's fine to have a tank. We're talking about the big silver tanks or the white painted tanks you see on the highway. If they're not baffled, they need to be full. That way you don't get any slosh. They'll slosh to the point, well, they'll tip the truck right over. I've seen it happen before. And there's nothing more frightening than to be in that. Well, in some of the early days on the Wildland Fireground, when the government started looking for the first contractors, there were some enterprising young Western men that thought, well, I can buy these old milk trucks for quite cheap on the open auction, and I can see what they're paying for these things, and how about I put one of these things on the back of this old truck, I drag it up there and hang a shingle, and now I'm getting paid $1,800, $2,000 a day to sit here by a fire hydrant and fill up engines, right? Well, what they didn't realize is that those tanks are not baffled. And the moment that thing is half full and they go on down the road and they get to turning like this, they found out that those trucks just turn turtle over upside down right away. Now, fuel tanks or tanks that are designed to where they might have to make deliveries, where they might drop 5,000 gallons here and 10,000 gallons here, and they'll be transporting with very varying levels of liquid, have what they call baffles in them, which are bulkheads, which when that fuel starts moving, it comes up against a wall and has to funnel through a grate or a series of small holes, and it counteracts that motion of moving back and forth. Well, the Forest Service came up with a clever trick on how to overcome the baffle problem, and you'll never guess what it was. Do you know? They filled those tanks with wiffle balls. A wiffle ball is cheap. It is full of holes. It doesn't take up very much volume. If you take a wiffle ball and see the plastic pellet that it starts with, it's very tiny, so you're not eating up volume. They filled those things full of wiffle balls. Then, no problem. The water couldn't get sloshing, it couldn't get moving. It would slowly percolate and filter through those balls, and that was the problem solved. I always thought that was fascinating. That was, whoever came up with that was super smart. Super smart. Overton, and new member, welcome, Overton, Bertaria shouted as a war cry. Bertaria, yeah. Bertaria. So yeah, go over and check out Owen's app at the App Store. And I will be downloading that as soon as I close I'm happy to hear about that because I didn't stay in contact with Owen and I didn't know how to follow him or where he was live streaming. He keeps getting kicked off of places. So I'm assuming that that's going to be a place where you can find out where his daily live streams are. And I'll be glad to get plugged into that. You know, he's up in northern Idaho. He's not far from here. And I go up there periodically, and I've been looking for an excuse to go up there for a good motor ride with Jack next summer. So we might have to pay a little surprise visit. That would be good to see their place and his family. We have a super chat from Rick Barnes. Shout out to you. And Rick writes, use a toothpick for air equalizer on the funnel. A toothpick? I'll have to look into that. I don't know how you do that. It's got a little nozzle on it. I think that funnel sucks. I'm going to get my granddad's get the old copper style funnel, or the old school ones, and we'll go back to that. I don't seem to spill, it's reeking with fuel here. I don't know. Just leave it to the government to come up with a regulation. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the truth. One of the worst things in the whole world is these EPA gas spouts. Growing up with the jerry cans that my granddad had, he had all the World War II surplus ones, the really good ones, before they got crummy. And they just had the old open valve. They vented perfectly. You could, it's hard to pick up one of those tanks of gas. That's heavy. What is gasoline? It's almost 7 pounds a gallon. 7 times 5, 35 pounds. Let's say, you're 40, you're basically like a plate, a bench plate or a gym plate once that thing is full. And, trucks are tall and things are tall, and you got to grab this thing, pick it up off the ground, hoist it up, and usually it's leaking. Mine's always leaking, so you're at an awkward angle, and you're trying to get your arm out there, and your disc, your body's at a bad angle, so it doesn't drip all over you. And then you have about a 15-minute process of wait as it's glugging out because of these stupid EPA spill-proof gasoline things. And then you end up getting frustrated and pulling on it, and then it breaks off, and then it pours all over the place, and you lose half the gasoline. They're miserable, hateful things. I've been ordering just the regular spouts, like for the race cans, and they seem to work a lot better. But I wish I could get a hold of some of those old ones that my granddad had, because I've got the newer ones, even the ones for the Wavian cans that you order out of Europe. I've bought those, the old school metal flexible ones that just have a straight tube. They don't hold up. They're no good. They break off immediately. It's a problem. There's no solution to those Wavian cans for a good pour spout. They're basically just for storage only. The spouts that they come with are absolutely trash. They're almost single use. Mr. Logan Carnes. Shout out to you, Logan. Glad to see you here. Member for 2 months. And Logan writes he's finally able to join the stream. Welcome. We're going to be here, or be square, 12 o'clock West Coast time. Come and join us. We'll be here. We have a super chat from Mr. Cody Bordeaux. Cody writes, new father of 6-month twins, just want to brag about our new no sleep lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah, I know about that. The Sweet Loaf has developed a bad habit of getting up in the middle of the night and wanting to come and chat and hang out. And Mrs. W is very good-natured. She's a very easygoing, good-natured woman, but there are 2 things that you do not want to get in between. I would rather be in between a mother bear and her cubs, than get in between Mrs. W's sleep and her food. We don't play around with that. And when the Sweet Loaf comes down and interrupts that, usually it's me to pick up the wreckage. I get it, man. That's rough. That's rough. But hang in there. It'll quit. It'll quit. The problem with twins is, my dad was very much the patriarch of the family, definitely a traditional man, and so it was of his opinion. He was of the opinion that the care and feeding of children, that was certainly woman's work. My mother told me that one of the few times that he allowed her to leave him alone with the children, my sister and I, apparently there was an accident or something. And rather than do the diaper, Dad just took it off, let it kind of fall outside, and then put us in the tub until my mother got home to take care of the business. That was how I was raised. So Mrs. W didn't quite have that in mind when we had Jack, but I was very determined, doggedly determined to maintain that tradition, which I did for the most part. I maybe changed 100 diapers or so. That was 100 more than I wanted to. But having one was certainly easier. The problem with twins is you got yours too. There's just no way around it. I mean, even the strongest patriarch is not going to be able to get a workaround on that one. I mean, it's one thing if you have one, it's like you take care of that, honey. But when there's 2 and she's already engaged, I don't see. There's no hope, brother. You're just going to have to get in there and just do it, and just do it. And you have the fact it's only going to smell worse in the future too. You have that to look forward to. But shout out to you and congratulations, man. That is awesome. Twins. Mrs. W's a twin. We have a super chat from Mr. Rick Gates. Shout out to you, Rick. And Rick writes, send me a mailing address and I'll send you a proper homeowner vintage funnel. Absolutely. Rick, send me an email, cody@wranglerstar.com. If you have one of those, even if it has a bad gasket on it, I'll fix that. I would even pay you whatever fair price is for that, because those things have their way, or are worth their weight in gold. However, it's got to fit on a Wavian. If it doesn't fit on a Wavian, it won't do me any good because I don't have those old tanks, those old cans anymore. I had quite a bunch of them that I got from my grandfather. That he bought World War II vintage ones. You know, the 5-gallon jerry cans you get now, like at the parts store or at Walmart, sometimes you see them at Walmart, they're rubbish. They're not any good. The lining inside comes off, contaminates your gas. They're made of super, super thin metal. They're super cheap. The screw caps, the thread, they're terrible. The gaskets just rot out. They're just awful. But the old ones were super good. So I had a whole bunch of those. And then I just got to the point, like I just have too much stuff. I had to make a decision. Do I keep Granddad's old cans or do I keep the new Wavian cans? And I've really agonized on that for a long time. And then I got to looking at it and Granddad's were getting pretty old. The coating inside was starting to flake off a little bit. It wasn't a big problem, but you did have to pre-filter your fuel. And I gave them to my buddy next door. He didn't have any, and I got him all set up. So it's easy. You know what I find with that sort of thing is you just can't keep everything. You can't keep track. You can't keep all that stuff. Sometimes there's just a time for things to go. And what makes it easy is if you can just pass it on to someone who doesn't have it. That takes away all the problems. If you have to try to throw something away like that that's good, it's just almost impossible for me. I just can't do it. Search out, find a place where you can give it away and someone else can use it. It makes it, you know, I know my mind is at peace. I hate to give away Granddad's cans and Granddad's stuff, but knowing that it's in good hands with a man that understands what it is and that they're good quality and will take care of them and get good use out of them, that means everything to me. Goodness, we have a super chat from Mr. Spartan219. Welcome back. Shout out to you, Spartan. It's always good to see you here. Have you heard of the Tuttle Twins children books? Tuttle Twins. No, I haven't. I have not. But I'll look into that. We're all about reading. The Sweet Loaf is starting to read now, and boy, she is tenacious. That child. Goodness, she just take it upon herself to read. We don't even have to teach her. She just asks, "What does this spell? What does this spell? What is this word?" All day long, she's just spelling things out. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. It's amazing to see a child this being raised by Mrs. W. Has done such a good job with her in a loving, intact home with good influences, cut off from all of the stuff. And it's astonishing. When one thing that's really interesting that I noticed about like modern day cartoons and media that's geared for little kids. You know, again, you grew up from our generation. You know, we grew up on cartoons and watching them, and they were not particularly good, not particularly bad, but they weren't intentionally trying to turn kids into little monsters. You know, we have, you know, I have mistakenly, you know, kind of had the stuff on, and she wants to watch something, and you know, we'll start watching animal videos, and then I will go on to something else, you know, and then she starts clicking on my. I don't let her on computers, but she'll start clicking on things, and pretty soon I'm hearing stuff like, what are you watching? And what I notice is that all of the little girls, whether they be superheroes or cartoon characters, they're nasty, they're sassy, they're disrespectful to parents, they're disrespectful to men. The boys are always stupid and inept, and all the little girls are perfect and stronger and better in every way. And just the sassy, nasty attitude, it's incredible. And I'll notice that she will pick up on that and she'll start mimicking it. I mean, it'll take 15 minutes, and she'll start responding to me in ways that are not acceptable. You know, we have respect in this household, and our children respect their parents, and we don't tolerate that for a minute. But that influence is so powerful if you're not super vigilant about it. And I was shocked. You just don't know. When you just think that things are a certain way, but they're not. That sort of entertainment, those cartoons, and if you're turning kids loose on that and you haven't like watched it, if you haven't looked to see what books they're getting out of the library, man, you got to be vigilant. You got to be hands-on. The adversary is after your children. Society, these librarians, these schools, they are after your children. Their values are not your values, and they are doing everything in their power. They're activists. These teachers now, they're not teachers so much anymore. They're glorified babysitters that are activists, that are doing everything they can do to destroy your kids. Not all, but too many, too many. So Be vigilant about that. So anytime you can get a reference for good books like that, like if the Tuttle Twins, I'll have to look into that. But thank you for that recommendation. The Lamplighter books. Those of you who are homeschoolers will know that those are wonderful books. The Lamplighter is a publishing house that scours the old libraries and things and finds books that are out of print that have no intellectual rights anymore, that they're open source, basically. They're open to reprint. And they get these old stories and these old books that were written for kids and children, and they reprint them in these small little volumes. Maybe one of the middlemen, can you go up and look up Lamplighter, I think it's Lamplighter Kids Books or something like that. Throw a link in there for everyone. They're wonderful. They're beautiful books. They're nicely bound. All of the stories have really great moral values, and it's a wonderful way to spend the evening with your kids. We've been collecting them since Jack was homeschooling when he was little. They're really wonderful. Goodness, we have a super chat from Back Creek Homestead and 1-year member. Shout out to you, Back Creek. We sure appreciate you being here. Who says, my kids love the Uncle Arthur books. My wife found a set at a yard sale a few years ago. Yeah, you should be able to buy a whole set of these things. I think Amazon, maybe you can still get used books, but there's a massive volume. I mean, we have a huge stack of them. And they're the perfect length, too. I mean, I went to public school, so I'm not too much about reading and intellectual things like that. So I don't want anything too long or complicated. I got to keep it simple. They're simple enough that if you're a professional homeowner, you won't look like a fool. You'll be able to read and understand and pronounce the words. And they're just the right length, about 2 or 3 pages. And what they leave open is a really good discussion for moral values. Each one of them is about a child that the kids can relate to. That is faced with a difficult situation or makes a bad decision, what were the consequences, and they're biblically based. They're very, very nice, very, very good books. It'd be the best $50 you ever spent, get a full volume set. Shout out to you, Back Creek Homestead, thank you. And we have a super chat from MW Clip. Shout out to you, MW. And he writes, what advice or words of wisdom do you have for me going into law enforcement? Specifically, sheriff's deputy. I'm 22, married. My daughter is 2. I don't like cops. I had an experience with a cop that was my own fault. Oh man, I wasn't going to admit this. Should I admit what I did? I was not demonstrating Christian character. I was overwhelmed. I'll admit it. I'll say it. This was a couple weeks. This was maybe a month ago or so. I was down in town. I was heading down to the lumber yard to pick up some Sawzall blades. This is a sore spot. The local city cops are the worst. And they prey, they're road pirates. They sit down by the highway and they prey on people. And they sit down there and all day long, all they do is just sit down there writing nitpicky little tickets. And they usually are picking on people that are poor. There's a lot of folks that work in, a lot of migrants here that work in the orchards. And you don't have a lot of money. It's hard to follow all the rules and the regulations. Things are so expensive. It's just difficult to do. And the more difficulty you have, the lower income you are, the more difficult it is. These bastards sit down there and just prey upon these people, and I just despise them. I just can't stand cops that do this. They're just... I drove by, I was in my truck, and I saw this woman out there doing the same thing, a parasite on society, and I flipped her the bird. Bold as brass, right there. She was looking at me, she was coming back to her car, I looked at her, and an evilness came over me. I'm sorry, I sinned, I'm not perfect. And I flipped her the bird, a good one. Eye contact. Well, she didn't like that, and she jumped in her car and followed behind me, and just turn for turn, followed me for 2 miles, like inches off my bumper, just waiting, just trying to provoke me. And if a cop follows you long enough, they're going to find some reason to pull you over. And she was right on my bumper, and there was a light turned red, and it was one of those, it was really difficult. It was like, it could have went either way, but she was so close, I thought she was going to rear end me. I mean, she was just feet off my bumper. I went through the red light. Of course, she puts the lights on, comes out, and she gives me a ticket, and she pulls me over. So I pull into the parking lot, and like, okay, I'm not going to get involved with this. This is a no-win situation. I did what I did. I do it again. I want her to know, and law enforcement that are predatory like that are road pirates, that are the scum of the earth. I want them to know that the public despises them. I hope more people do that. It was worth taking the ticket for it. I turned on my phone. I set it on the dash. She came up to the window, and I said, I just want you to know I'm recording this. And she says, well, it's a free country. You have every right. And I didn't say a word. I passed over my license, registration, all that stuff. She went back, ran all my plates, all that, gave me tickets, and off I went. You're asking the wrong dude about law enforcement. I could not support it. I could not support that decision. I do not like law enforcement. They become abusive. They're antagonistic against people. They have the mentality, not all, but most. The sheriffs, there are exceptions. My local sheriffs, I've never had a problem with. I will take this case by case. I know one of the sheriff's officers is a subscriber. He drops by the house here periodically. I have no issue with them because they're on the same page with us. They understand. They're not out writing people tickets. They're not being a parasite on society. Our local sheriff is a good dude. He came out publicly and said, I don't care what the feds do, whatever laws they pass, or the state, we will not enforce anything that's unconstitutional, which means any sort of gun bans or coming to people's house or confiscation, he will not support it. So I can get behind that. If you're talking about the sheriff in a rural department that has these morals and standards that are part of the community and not parasites and pieces of garbage, then maybe. But that's going to be on a case-by-case situation because not all sheriffs are good either. So I don't like cops, and I would not recommend you get involved with them. And they say, there's some good cops in the department. You can't paint everyone with a broad brush. Yes, I can, because if you're in law enforcement, if you're in a large department, you know that there's bad apples in there. You know that there are cops in there that are abusing people, that are taking advantage of people, that are power tripping, that are just making people's lives miserable. And the fact that you stand by there and you still stand behind that blue line and you work there and take that paycheck and you don't come out publicly and you don't condemn this action, then you're complicit. And you throw away any goodness that you may have, or your good motivation is gone and out the window, in my opinion. I can't support it. So what's the solution? Should we just have anarchy? We have it now. Tell me, how do you feel when a cop pulls up behind you? Do you feel safe? Do you feel, man, I sure am glad that cop is behind me. I sure am glad he's sitting there on the side of the road. I feel so much better now. I don't feel that way. My wife doesn't feel that way. Nobody I know feels that way. No, you feel tension. You feel fear. You like, what's he going to do? They plant. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. And, well, I've said what I've said. Don't become a cop. What's the solution? I'll take my own security. I'll take security into my own hand. The solution is simple. Mandatory concealed carry. Mandatory concealed carry for all men at an age of whatever, pick it, 21 and over, that you have to do it. You have to have it on you. And that will take care of itself. Dude's not going to walk in and start kicking up dust and causing a problem in a grocery store or restaurant when he knows that there's 4, 5, 6, 7 guys over there that are going to address that. And it's going to be a numbers game. It's not a difficult thing to overcome. We got by a long time without predatory road pirates and revenue collectors and parasites, and we have to pay them for this. What are their salaries? $80,000, $100,000 a year plus benefits, early retirements? Sickening. And the fire department needs to be dismantled as well. It needs to go away, and that needs to be privatized as well. Even if we just did away with all of them, and we took the money that we spend on maintaining these luxurious fire departments and these ridiculous not all of them, but a lot of them, these salaries are ridiculous with overtime and such. If we just put that money in a fund, and when your house burnt down, we'll just build you a new house. It'd be simpler and easier to deal with it that way. I've worked with them. I know. I know. You guys are provoking me here. Mr. Tim Caldwell, shout out to you, says, that is absolutely insane. No mop and glow squad for me. No, she chased me down. It was retaliatory. And I went down to the station and filed a complaint against her, too. We have a super chat from Noah Barrier, a new member. Welcome, Noah. Noah says, what is your favorite call you had while in the fire department? My favorite call or the strangest call? What was my favorite call? I'm trying to think of something. I think of one that's most memorable. Well, I'll just tell you about my first call. It was pretty scary. So, no, I've already told that. I think the one that comes to mind is the guy who stabbed himself. So we got a call of a man, 24, 25, that was suffering from a stab wound in the chest, which is, it's usually pretty serious. And so you never know what you're going to respond to, So we're trying to get him. You try to get information, and I'm the lead medic on my engine. I was in the back seat then, and we pull up, and there's a girl outside that's hysterical. She's the girlfriend, and then her boyfriend is sitting in the driver's seat with his seatbelt on, and he stabbed himself with a big old knife, like a hunting knife, right in the sternum, right here. Well, he was still doing okay, but he got it in there deep. It didn't hit his heart or any seemed to hit any arteries. He was talking and conscious and all that. But what he had done is his girlfriend had broke up with him, and he stabbed himself to get even with her. I never understood that. But then he went through the seatbelt too, so we had to deal with that. We had to cut the seatbelt off. And I know what the best call was. This is simple. It just came to my mind. It was right after that one. There was a really bad car wreck right in the town of Dillon, right in the busiest intersection in town. And it was a bad one. It was a couple. It was a young girl. She's probably 17, high school, 16, 17, high school age, pretty young girl. And she had blown through the red light and just wadded her car up bad on a big, pole, like a street light pole. And it was just crunch. It was basically just a ripped up metal cage around her. She was in there trapped, and she was terrified. She was relatively uninjured, but terrified. And so in the process of, I was kind of, my lieutenant and I were kind of in the charge of extracting her. In the process of that whole experience, there's a lot that goes into it, cribbing up the car, getting the jaws out, and cutting all that. Of just, when I reached down and grabbed her, when we finally got the roof flopped off and all of that, reached down and grabbed her, and I had a blanket around her because we were cutting through glass and stuff to keep the glass from getting on her and protect her a little bit. When I grabbed her in that blanket and picked her up out of that car, the look, I can see it to this day, the look of gratitude that young girl gave me as I locked eyes with her was nothing I'd ever experienced before. Of a gratefulness, of a true, sincere gratefulness that I had never, ever experienced like that before, was just warmed my heart. And it really kept me going for a long time. And I realized, you can get cavalier with that job. One thing when you're in emergency services like that, and a lot of guys and women have lost their careers because they've said things that the public has considered to be crass. And before that had happened, we would run calls, decapitate, all sorts of horrible things. And it's so horrific and so traumatic just dealing with that when you're, body parts and blood and children. It's horrible. That a way that you cope with it is the gallows humor. And the things that we would say, like when I think back, some of the things that we would say in the confines of the engine, there before of us after these calls, that we would be making jokes, laughing about, what we'd saw and things that when I first experienced that, I was mortified. But then once I had been around a lot of gore and horrible things, tragedy like that, I fell in suit like that and participated with that as well. Well, what I found out later it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to divert the horror that you experienced in trying to bring in some humor or some levity with it, and it's a coping mechanism. And I know of guys that have said things like that, or had tried to cope with with difficult situations where the public had heard it, or maybe it was on a radio, or someone was around listening, or whatever, and that can end your career, and those things can happen. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but that's definitely the most memorable call that's the one that comes to mind. That was really extraordinary. We have a super chat from Daniel Pina. Shout out to you, Daniel. And Daniel writes, "Hi, Cody. New to your channel, and let me just say, the collection of your videos gives me the fizz." I agree. I can relate to that. It gives me the fizz as well. You know, where I didn't come up with the fizz. I have to give credit where credit is due, and that is the originator of the fizz is Mr. James May from Top Gear. Top Gear, the UK auto show, which is the best show ever created, the old one, not the new one. And I think he was at Pebble Beach during a car show. I think it was the first time I heard it. And they walked up to an extraordinary car, which is the coolest car. It's definitely in the top 3, the coolest car of all time. Does anyone know what it is? Guess? Can you guess what the coolest car of all time is? A Ferrari Daytona. Original Ferrari Daytona, California. And him and Jeremy Clarkson, I believe it was, or I think it was Jeremy, walked up to it, and he's looking at it, and he said, "You know, it kind of gives you the fizz," or something to that effect. So I always thought that was funny, and it's true. You know, when you see something, Nothing Fancy calls it the second kind of cool, and you can't account for taste. That's why you just never judge people about their likes or what gives them the fizz. If it gives them the fizz, let them enjoy it. There's a guy that a friend of mine that we do rifle shooting together occasionally, and I tend to like gravitate towards the cool military stuff. And when I'm building ARs or center fires and stuff, I look to, and I try to, I'm not a cloner. I don't copy, not that that's not cool, that's super cool. Some guys will try to, will clone exact pieces of vintage and modern military weapons. I think that's really cool. I'm all about that. But I don't have that level of detail, and oftentimes it's expensive, and a lot of those things are hard to source. But you can get close. I try to get close and get the flavor of it, and that's just what I like to do. That's what gives me the fizz. He buys the gankiest, weirdest rifles, like oddball things and strange calibers and like a lever action deals with weird barrels, and I mean just goofy things. And I don't judge him for it. That's what he likes. That's what he does. He's a little bit quirky himself, and he enjoys that. He likes having something different. He likes to be able to compete and do just as well as the guys with the high-speed stuff, with this weird, corny stuff, and I think that that's cool. You just can't account for taste. It's fun we should always share our things that we like, but if a man says, "You know what? This gives me the fizz," that is a pass. That is a hands-off. You have to leave him alone. You don't have to understand it. You don't even have to like it. It turns his crank. It gives him the fizz. He likes it. Leave him alone. He's entitled to do that. Life is hard, and there's very few joys in life, especially for us men, beasts of burden that we are. Leave us alone. Let us have our fizz, for goodness sakes. But thank you for that, Daniel, and welcome. We have a super chat from Mr. Madrix303, 6-month member. Shout out to you. "Hey, Cody, new to owning 2 small portable generators. How often should I run them, and how long to keep them in working order when needed?" So your generators, if you have a small generator, this is what we did with the fire department, and I think that this is the best method. If it's something that you're not going to use or need in an emergency, you should run it. You should have no fuel in the tank. Now, not having fuel in the tank, it's going to be impossible for it to varnish up and clean. So when you're ready to put it away for winter, I would get on AMSOIL, and I'd get their fogging oil. They have a fogging oil. So let's say you're going to put your generator away for the summer. You've had it out. You've had it prepped for the winter, for power outages. Usually that's when they're going to come. And you don't often use those things in the winter. So if it's going to be put away for 6 months or so, I would, or in the summer, I would do this. Get a good fogging oil like AMSOIL, follow the instructions, you'll take the spark plug out, and what that'll do is, right as you're running it dry, you're running the thing dry, you'll spray this stuff in there, and it will coat all of the cylinders, it will coat the valve train, you'll spray it in the cylinder, all that, and it will keep all of that metal in there from rusting. So, because what happens is, as it sits, the oil drains down. And if you're a southern man and you live in a high humidity area, all that condensation will build up and it can cause pitting on the rings and rusting and all sorts of problems. You don't have to do that. If you just follow that simple instruction of just running the fuel dry so it's not going to gum up on you, and then doing that, your Seafoam type of stuff or your AMSOIL, that's not the only one out there. That's a good thing to do. Also, don't store your generators on the ground in a shop on the wet floor if you can help it. If you can get them elevated up on a shelf a little bit, moisture sits down on the ground, and it's a much worse place to put it. So bear in mind with those two things. But what I do is if you're not using your generator, run it once a year and just change the oil. Change the oil every year and just run it once a year. If your power goes out regularly and you have it running, through the winter, you don't have to worry about that so much. You've already ran it. But the number one thing, non-ethanol fuel. Ask your gas station. There's some websites you can go on locally that will give you the location of places that sell non-ethanol fuel. As a rule of thumb, most premium fuel, your 91 octane, is going to be non-ethanol. It'll oftentimes say so on the pump. That's the way it is here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know about your area, but have a policy in your house that if it goes in a small engine or in a can, if it's not my car or truck, then it is always, always, always non-ethanol. The additives and the ethanol that they put into fuel will eat the rubber gaskets. It will gum up your carburetor. It is the bane of men's existence. More small engine problem has been caused by that than anything else. The non-ethanol will hold for about a year or so, and it won't gum you up. But just run it through there. Follow the instructions I gave you, and you'll have a piece of equipment that'll last a long time. Have a few spare parts on hand as well. One thing that I see that happens often that really mess guys up are broken pull ropes or starter cords. You can buy a roll of starter cord, throw it in your supply cache, have that there. It'll work across all of your tools, your chainsaws and such. That's the main thing. Have a spark plug, have an extra change of oil, and just be really fastidious with your fuel. If your unit doesn't have a fuel filter, let me show you something. I'm going to step away for just 1 second. This is really important. A lot of the small engines are not going to have fuel filters. And if you're not super vigilant about your cans, or there's always grit and sand in those things, for $3 or $4, you can get these little inline fuel filters. I'll take it out here and show you. And you don't have to be a mechanic to do this. If you look underneath the tank, most of them are going to be gravity feed. There's going to be a little rubber fuel line, a 1/4-inch fuel line that comes out of there, and get you one of these. Get half a dozen of them and keep them in your kit. They're little tiny inline, super tight, fine micron, whatever, fuel filters. They're directional. Get them in the right way, and this will save you a ton of aggravation right there. I put them on everything, all my motorcycles, and when I change the oil annually, if I haven't used it, I toss it out and I throw a new one on. They're just $3-4. It's what you want to do. But shout out to you for getting prepared and having some generators. Tell me that doesn't feel good. And extension cords. Have extension cords, have more, figure what you think you need and then double it, and have some of the splitters with the 3 on there, because you'll have, when the power goes out, you'll have extension cords running all over, and those are very handy to have. We have a super chat from Andrew, Mr. Andrew Stone. Shout out to you, Andrew. Andrew says, unauthorized TV to watch his live streams. They do that now. Oh, I didn't know that. Is he still tied in with Vox Day? I spoke with Vox Day on the phone a few years ago. I don't know. I heard maybe they had a falling out. I don't know. I don't know the details. I didn't get involved with it. But thank you, Andrew. We have a shout out from Mr. Joe C., and 3-year member. Shout out to you, Joe. It's always good to see you here. He says, on the Wavian cans, mine are consistently expanding and contracting as temperature changes. Is that a problem? It's not. I have the same thing. One thing that you can do to mitigate that, if you're storing fuel, any of you want to store your fuel on the north side of your shop. That's where it's going to be the coolest, your northern exposure. Always put fuel on that, especially if it's outside. You do not want fuel tanks or cans or anything like that in direct sunlight, because as that heats up, they will expand tremendously. I made the mistake of the first time I bought a fuel cube, a 100-gallon fuel cube. I put it in the back of my truck, went to the gas station, filled it up there, 100 gallons. Yeah, man, I'm good, right? Well, I brought it into the shop because I didn't have my outside storage set up yet. And in one night, the next morning, and this was out of direct sunlight, but just the heat difference. This was my old shop. I came into the shop, and there must have been 15 gallons of fuel all over the floor where that had expanded and pushed that out through the vent. So don't fill your cans up all the way. You're not supposed to fill them up all the way. You're going to want to, and everyone does it. They think, well, right to the top. I want to get as much emergency fuel as possible. No, don't do that. You need to leave a good headspace, a lot of airspace, because that will push, they'll push out tight as a drum. I have never had a wavy and split. I have had them full. I've had people that work for me that filled them up unbeknownst to me, and I noticed that they were popping and oil canning, meaning that pop, 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 that metal sound when the sun came up, but I've never had one leak on me. Be careful when you're opening those Wavians. They spray fuel if you overfill them, and if you get in front of it or beside it and you pop that cap off, it'll open up and it'll glob a whole bunch of gas out all over your pants and everything. It's horrible. So stand behind it when you open them, or leave some headspace. You should be leaving 6 inches or so in those cans. What that will do is that air you can compress air. You can't compress liquid, and the air will compress and they'll move a little bit, but they're designed to do that. It's not a problem. They're high quality cans. They're military grade cans. We have a new super chat from Jezza 4300. Are you the original Jezza? You know who Jezza is? Mr. Jeremy Clarkson. That's his nickname. And new member. Welcome, Jezza. He says, Owen streams around 10 a.m. on unauthorized TV and Rumble. Well, that's perfect. We can go watch Owen, and then we can go right over here to me. I'm glad we're not stepping on each other. I lost contact. Things get out of mind, and once Owen, I followed him. I watched all of his stuff when he was on YouTube. And then when he moved over to, what was the place with the lemons? I tried to follow along for a while, but I didn't like the site, and I just lost track. But I need to get back over there, see what Owen's been up to. We have a super chat from Mr. Christopher S. Wilson, and 4-year member. Shout out to you, Christopher. Thank you for your faithfulness. TurtleTwins.com teaches your kids how the world really works. These are great books. Tuttle Twins. All right. Well, we're going to put that into the official reading list of Professional Homeowner, ProHo, the Tuttle series, and I'll pass that on to Mrs. W. I don't think we've heard of that. Maybe she knows. Thank you for your super chat. We have a super chat from Anthony Goes to Tennessee. Shout out to you, Anthony. Welcome. This says, had a disturbing, vivid dream of a nuclear bomb going off in the distance and watching a wall of fire approach as I held my woman soon to die. Is there a meaning? I don't know about dreams. I'm not a dream interpreter. I do know that people lie. Now, I'm not accusing you. I believe that you had this dream. And people will use or say, especially with weak-minded Christians, will say, oh, I had a dream about you thus and so, and I have a word from the Lord and all this. And that's fine. Maybe that happened and maybe it didn't. But basing your faith or decisions on dreams that's shaky ground. That's shaky ground for you, especially, and it's really shaky ground for anyone else that you want to say, hey, this is happening. I had a dream that a nuclear weapon is going to go off in Seattle and you need to get ready. Well, it's hard to quantify that, hard to do with it, but we shouldn't discount it because the good book told us in the end times that one of the things that we will see that will be a confirmation of prophecy is that young men will dream dreams and old men will have visions, or vice versa. I think young men will have visions and old men will dream dreams. And that these are shadows or harbingers of things to come, warning God's people and warning His church. Could that be happening? Could this be from God? Obviously, it was not a normal dream or you wouldn't be sharing it with us. It had a profound impact on you. And I spend a little time on TikTok, And I've seen this is a common thing. You're not the only one that's been having this dream. I've seen several people that have said similar things, that they see this coming, or are having dreams about this. They've never had dreams about it before. Well, it might be coming. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, we're not going to do anything. There's nothing we can do about it. Have you made basic preparations? Do you have 3 months of food? Do you have a little bit of extra emergency gas? Do you have chainsaws, tools? Do you have the ability to heat your house? Do you have the ability to defend your home from looting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Do you have some basic first aid kits, some medical skills? Do you have the ability to start fire? Do you have the ability to heat water? You know, that sort of thing. Can you put a garden in? Do you know how to do that? If you do have a garden, do you have a fence so the deer won't come and eat everything in one night, as they will? That's all we can do. God told us not to be fearful. Jesus said, fear not. How many times? We have no reason to fear. This is something that's far beyond our control. We have no ability to do anything about it. And to be honest with you, if we were vaporized tomorrow from a nuclear weapon, that would save us a whole lot of trouble, and we wouldn't have to go through all the trials of the tribulation, you know. So there's nothing you can do about it. There's no point of worrying about it other than put the basic preparations in place, trust God, make sure you have your salvation secured, and then you move forward. We move forward and upward. And if it happens, and we'll deal with it the best that we can. The thing that is most encouraging and what is truly exceptional and extraordinary about Americans is our ability to adapt. I think Americans have the ability to adapt over all other people in the world in any other country. We, and many of us, to be honest with you, are so tired of being on a knife's edge, waiting for the penny to drop, waiting for whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Is there going to be an invasion for a foreign country? Is our own government going to turn on us? Is there going to be a major terrorist attack? Are we going to be without power and water? Is the food supply going to be interrupted? Is the gasoline supply? You know, who knows? Who knows what it's going to be? A lot of us are at the point now where it's like, well, whatever is going to happen, let's bring it on. Let's bring it on so that we can at least know what is in front of us and know what the work is and know what we have to do, rather than just being in this limbo. So I'm not going to worry about it. There's nothing we can do about it. Prepare the best you can and act accordingly. Bring it on. We will adapt the best we can. We have God on our side. I don't care. I don't have a fear in the world. It's a frightening thing, I'm sure, to see the dream, but use it to motivate you to prepare. Make sure you share it with your loved one and get your wife on board if she isn't already. We have a super chat, and shout out to you. Thank you for your generosity. Shout out to you. Shout out to Chase Cormick, and new member, welcome, who says, I vote to change the name of the mods from Middlemen to Minutemen. No, I've said what I've said. I've already made the call. I like it. It gives me the fizz. That makes it completely off the table and out of reach of anyone. I say middlemen. Problem is that my TDS, my text-to-speech, doesn't pick up middlemen, only middleman. But I make the corrections. It's worth it. Shout out to you. Thank you for the suggestion. We have my 125-21252, member for 2 months. We've seen you here before. Thank you. He says, Leather asked about it at the end of the pump. Yours is rubber. Read the plump. Yeah, what he's talking about, I know what you're talking about now. I should have known better. My granddad used to make those by hand. What he's talking about, and in your lantern kit, if you have the heart, and you can work past the fear of lighting the infernal things, one thing you should have in your lantern kit is this. A new generator. I did a video on this. You can build these for just a few dollars, just basic stuff, but I put a false bottom in mine to store extra supplies. In there is mantles and spare parts. And this is the replacement pump, is what he's talking about. This one is rubber, and you have to pump up the pressure to push the fuel through the jet to light. That's how it works. You can pump it 30 times, it'll pretty much, if you run it on medium, it'll pretty much run all day. But these, the old ones, the leather would dry out. So if you buy one of these if you buy one of these old lanterns at an estate sale, and it's the old school one, then if you take this, what do they call it? It's just a pump. If you take this apart, you'll see in there the leather will be all dried out, and it won't hold a seal, and you can't get any pressure in the tank. You can buy replacements for that. If I had those old school lanterns in my emergency lantern kit, you want to have extras in there. They just cost a little bit. And I also heard, I haven't verified this, but I think if you send your old Coleman lanterns back to Coleman, they have had a long-standing policy where they'll completely rebuild all of that stuff, the generator and the pump and everything, and get it functioning for, I think it was $45 or $60. It wasn't very much. It was less than $100. You have to pay the shipping, but that's not a bad deal. But you can do it yourself. So have those parts in there. And yes, the leather. Granddad used to make them. You know, he made everything. You know, I do a small amount of leather work, but I remember one of the fondest memories of him is I remember him punching holes in leather belts. You know, I came over. He said a man is not dressed if he's not wearing a leather belt. There's a couple things that you did not leave the house without, and this is canon for Proho. You do not leave the house as a man. This is canon. I'm telling you, this is important. Write this down. Without a pocket knife, without a belt on, without a handkerchief. Those three things. My dad, that wasn't his belief, but it was my granddad's belief. Granddad told me of the time that, I'm going to get this wrong, I can't remember. I don't remember. I think it was his dad or his uncle. I was thinking it was him, but I don't remember. It doesn't matter. It was close relative. You know what a mean cow is? You urban people won't know this, but there are mean cows that are just born mean. They're just ornery, and they'll chase you down and they'll gore you to death, especially some of the bulls if they're protecting a harem. I almost got killed by a mean cow one time. It's no joke. I was archery hunting, and I had to cross a fence, and the other fence was a quarter mile the other side of the pasture. It was quite a ways aside, but I didn't want to go around. Like, I'll just go over this fence and I'll run across here. I was archery hunting to get to an area up in the Ochocos, to other area. And I knew about mean cows because I'd had experience with them before. And I saw a bull over here with the big horns and the harem over here. And I thought, I wonder if that's a mean cow. Well, I figured I could probably cross that quarter mile before he'll get to me. He was an eighth mile away. Sure enough, man, I no more than got in the middle of that pasture, and here he came with his nostrils on fire. Like, oh, crap. I turn around, man, double back, and I was full sprint. I was running as fast as I can, bow in hand. I barely made it to the fence before I Supermaned over that fence, caught my clothes, tore my camos all up. Luckily, I didn't rip my hide open, and he met me right there at the fence, standing there snorting and snotting at me. I was so mad at that stupid mean cow, that bull. I used to carry in my quiver on the side of my bow. When you're archery hunting, some guys carry quivers on the belts. I carried a quiver on the bow where you have your arrows and your broadheads. But just because I was a petulant child, I always carried an XX75 aluminum arrow with a rubber snubber, with a rubber blunt tip on it. And there were things when you're a kid, you want to shoot everything, and so you'd see something that you weren't hunting that you maybe wanted to practice or shoot, but you didn't want to kill it. We'd let those things go, and just for fun. Man, I drew back at that thing, about 75-pound bow, and I let him have it right in the forehead with that that rubber snubber, and that got his attention, and he ran off. But I didn't go back across that pasture, I'll tell you that. But Granddad, or his dad, I think it was, almost got killed by a mean cow. Same situation. He got out in the pasture, and this bull got on him and got him down on the ground and was goring him to death. He was fighting for his life. He had a pocket knife in the right front pocket. That's where it should be carried, in the right on your dominant hand. He had a pocket knife, and this would have been the old trifold style. That's what Granddad always carried. And while fighting for his life, he was able to get his hand in there, and he got that knife out and he got it open. And he said he started cutting on that bull's nose, just slashing, fighting for his life, just slashing and slashing, and finally got to the point where he inflicted enough pain on that miserable creature that it let him loose and he survived. He was convinced, Granddad was 100% convinced, you know, he was there experienced, you know, he knew about it, that pocket knife saved his life. And so he always carried one after that. So when I started spending a lot more time with him, my dad worked a lot, you know, he really raised me from the time I was like 6 up until, you know, 13, 14 or so. I spent more time with him than my dad. He was just, he was appalled that I showed up. I didn't have a belt on, I didn't have a handkerchief, and I didn't have a pocket knife. Man, we went straight away. We went right down to the G.I. Joe's, the old hardware store. It was G.I. Joe's it started as a surplus store after World War II, then it turned into a big retailer that sold sporting goods and stuff, and they're gone now. But we would go to G.I. Joe's, and he bought me a Charade old timer, trifold pocket knife with the little one, the sheep's foot, and the long Texas toothpick or whatever they call those things. And I was so proud with the simulated bone handles. I carried that so proudly. And he gave me a handkerchief, blue, and the handkerchief needs to be carried in the left pocket on the rear, and a belt. And the belt, I think the belt was one of his old belts that it didn't fit me because I was just little. And I'll never forget it. You know, I was so proud to have that stuff. I was just like my granddad. And we sat on that little kitchen table, and he went and got his leather tools and laid that belt out, and we tried it on, and he started punching holes. Punched holes. I have the hole puncher right here. Punched the holes in that belt and put it on me, and you know, there's like this much tail on it. He would never consider cutting it off. No, you don't cut. Just tuck it around. You'll grow into that belt. There'd be no reason to waste it. If you cut it now, then it won't be good to you when you're older. You know, he was frugal. That was the way that he was. And I'll never forget that. So out of just respect to him and just tradition, to be able to do as much as you can with your own things, on my blue toolbox here, I have a drawer that's dedicated just for all those leather tools. I have Granddad's old leather tools, his punches, and just lots of little extra things, little hardware and things for belts if the little studs fall out, you know, little screw-in things, and some extra buckles, and I maintain that tradition. I like that. Granddad was a good man. We have a super chat from Mr. Austin Fitterer. Shout out to you, Austin. And Austin writes, conservatives that support police, they don't realize that local cops will violate your rights and take your guns just as the feds will. Yeah, they're not your friends. I'm not going to rant again, but they're not your friends. They're the enemy. They're the enforcement arm of the government to enforce their will, and they will do it. They will do it. They don't give a damn about you. Mercenaries. Not all. Again, my local sheriffs, I have nothing bad to say about them. You know, I noticed that after I went public with my disdain of law enforcement, that the local sheriff that used to stop by here, I don't think I've seen him since. So if he's watching, no ill will to you. You've been nothing but good to me. And as long as you keep it that way, then we'll be on good terms. We have a super chat from Old at Heart. Shout out to you, a 2-month member. You've been here with us a short time now. He said, I found out you were a Top Gear fan when you told Jack to get out the way while you were winching so he wouldn't end up like James May. Yeah, I remember that episode. Goodness, that was terrifying. You don't realize the power in a winch line. What happened was they were on, it was a special, and I think Richard Hammond had to put a winch on the front of a Mini or something like that. And the line was coming up taut. And there's so much energy in one of those. And James May was kind of minding the line. And when that thing came tight, just the shock from that blew it and kind of knocked him down, and he smacked his head and had a pretty bad head injury. They're not to be trifled with, man. They are dangerous. That's why I'm very happy to. I've grown up doing a lot of vehicle recovery and winching. From the first winch I had was on that 77 Bronco when I was 18. I put a winch on there. I actually worked at Warren. I built those winches for years. And so I've been around it a lot. And I used to do a lot of wheeling and rock crawling in Moab when I had my Jeep parts business. So I'm very familiar with it. I've always had them and been around them a lot. I get it. And recently I've switched to that synthetic line. And that synthetic line is where it's at because it's not as durable. It's definitely more expensive, but it's a lot lighter. And it doesn't carry the energy. If that stuff breaks, it just falls on the ground. For the most part, it's not going to kill you. But if a wire rope breaks, It'll take your head off. It's exceedingly dangerous. It needs to be respected. We have a super chat from Mr. Mark. Shout out to you, Mark. He says, Cody, have you ever owned Red Wing boots or thoughts? I never have. I never have owned Red Wing. Granddad, he was a Red Wing. That's what he wore. That's what he wore when he worked as a mechanic his whole life. There was a Red Wing store down at the Oregon City Shopping Center, down from where he lived. And I remember, I was little tiny. I remember going down there with him. He would buy a pair every couple years or so, and he was a Red Wing man. They were the best of the best back in the day, or they were among the best, up there with Westco and Nix, and of course the heritage awesome boot companies from the Pacific Northwest that came out of the logging camps. But I have never owned a pair, but I have heard mixed reviews of late. I don't know that they're the quality that they are. I don't know if they're still made in the U.S., but I can't speak to it. But they were the gold standard back in the day, and I don't know about today. Goodness, we have a super chat from Dayar Abdullah. Shout out to you and welcome. Good to see some international flavor here. I appreciate that. Appreciate your support. Welcome back, Jamie. We have super chat from Jamie. Jamie's also a new member. Jamie writes that he's been thinking about buying a dump trailer and renting it out, but not sure if there's a market for it on a small town. They're super hard to find. Yeah, how would you test that out? First, I'll find out if anyone's renting them around. I say dump trailers for rent in that area. Find out what they're getting for them, and maybe don't go to your local commute, like where you're going to operate. Maybe go to a surrounding county. Find someone that's doing it, and just be respectful. Say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm calling you because I will not be operating in your area, but I'm trying to get a little side hustle going, trying to find out if this is viable. Are you doing this? Are you doing okay? What are you making? Can you give me any advice? And maybe even build a partnership. Partnerships can start that way, where if he gets in a bind, say, hey, I'll stick to my area. I won't step on your toes. But if you get in a bind, or maybe I get in a bind, maybe we can help one another out, and you could build a partnership and a friendship. Don't be afraid to approach people and ask people. Most guys are honored to have someone ask their opinion on something. If you go there with a humble heart, not trying to be a know-it-all and disrespecting him or trying to nose in on his business. Not that you don't have a right to do it, but there's just common decency and common respect. So that's what I would do. I can't answer your question. I don't know your area. I know here it's profitable, and there's guys doing it. And if it's profitable here, I'm sure it's profitable there. But the best place for you to operate is going to be where there are the most people in urban areas. The more urban the area, the suburbs, you're going to have the least men that are much less capable. Out in the country, guys are going to have their own dump trailer, and they're not likely to hire you. They're going to be way more independent. So that's what I would do. Just don't be afraid to talk to people and ask people what's going on and find out. Just educate yourself before you invest in it. But even so, even if you do buy one just to try it out, what are you out? If you bought it, if you're buying it right, if you know what the market is, you know what they cost new, you know what they cost used, then it's money in the bank. You can use it a little bit. If it doesn't work out for you, sell it. You get your money out of it. You haven't lost anything. There's just no downside. We have a super chat from Mr. Stephen Hammond. Shout out to you, Stephen. And Stephen writes that he's building a 4x4 garden this winter. That's a good size. That's not too far off from what we have. Our first garden was about 150 by 150. It was too big to manage. That was Mrs. W was trying to run it herself, and man, we were out there weeding. It was too much. So 40 by 40, I think that's a perfect size. He says, what is your advice on garden fencing? Style, layouts, can you use PT East Coast? Yeah, you can use, I wouldn't use PT in your garden boxes. There's a lot of chemicals in that pressure treat. What he's talking about, he's talking like the outdoor wood or the pressure treated wood. It's ground contact wood. It's supposed to last longer. What the dirty secret behind that is that up here anyway, I can't speak for what East Coast man does. They do things strangely over there. But here, the trash garbage wood is reserved for pressure treat. It's just garbage. And then they put a bunch of chemicals in it to prevent it from rotting. and then that's sold as ground contact. I have used it in the trades. I've been around it all my life, and what the general consensus around here is it's worse than just good fur. It doesn't last any longer. And then you have all the negative effects of all whatever it is that they're injecting into it, leaching into your fruits and vegetables. Now, is it a problem for a fence? No. I mean, the best thing you can do with fence is either Doug fir. Old growth Doug fir lasts decades. It's incredible. And even better than that is Western red cedar. Cedar posts last a long, long time. But what you can do is save your used motor oil. I can't give you instructions to do this. What has been done in the past, and of course you could never do this today because it would be an environmental nightmare. Save your used motor oil, and when you get your posts, what they used to do was they'd roll that on there like that. And if you're really enterprising and you want them to last a long, long time, when you get them in the ground, they used to take a 1/2-inch auger bit and run down at an oblique angle as shallow as you can, deep down into that post near the bottom. Don't go all the way through. Just keep it, put a piece of tape on it and measure, so when you hit that tape, you're not going too far, you're not drilling through the bottom, and then every couple years or so, save your used motor oil. They used to save their used motor oil, and they would pour a little bit in there. They still do that with telephone poles today. There's actually a guy, his job, he goes around and you take a pocket knife and either put a cork in it or whittle a little plug, because you don't want rain getting in there and rotting it out from the inside. So plug it off, make a little plug, fill that up with the used motor oil, and then that will leach into the wood over the whole year, and that will basically last almost forever if you remember to do that. That's the way it was done. But I would stay away from pressure treat. I don't like chemicals around my food, especially around garden boxes. But you do what you got to do. If it's cost prohibitive, then do what you have to do. But do try to have natural wood for your garden boxes. We have a super chat from Lexus Landscape. Shout out to you, Lexus. And Lexus writes a very generous super chat to you. Thank you for your faithfulness and support. He says, hey, Cody, great stream. Spent the last 15 hours on my cat pushing snow. Finished just in time for the live stream. Great way to end the day. Thank you for the great content. Man, that's a long day. People think that operating equipment is just easy, that you're just sitting there pulling levers. But it's not, especially if you're operating around other men and you have to keep track of things. Working in the snow, pushing snow is very stressful because you don't often know what's under the snow, and you have the constant worry of tearing stuff up and breaking stuff. It's hard. If you don't have a cab and you're out in the elements, that's even double hard. So shout out to you, man. That's a long, long day. That's hard work. Hard on your body. We have a super chat from Dair, another one from Abdullah. Shout out to you, who writes, has a message this time. He says, thank you for all the amazing content you make. I've been watching your content since I was 13, and I'm 19 now, and I've learned a lot. Well, I appreciate you being here, and I really do. That's very generous of you. Good luck to you. Hope to see you tomorrow. We have a super chat from WRC, a 2-year member. Shout out to you, WRC, who writes, UCO lanterns, Coleman dual fuel, or both. You need both. They're two separate things. The little UCO lanterns are really good for power outages. The 3 candle lanterns they even put out a fair amount of heat. I would dare say if you had one of those, I mean, there were people that in these last couple of years, when weather's been manipulated and caused unnatural storms by who knows who, allegedly, there are people that are dying in their home because they just have not had to experience that before, freezing to death. It's dreadful. Something like that, a UCO lantern, or one of these, they put off a fair amount of heat as well. You know, if you can get into a bathroom and put the towels on the door, you know, insulate from any air from getting in there, or even get under a table with a couple blankets, that'll keep the temperature 30, 40 degrees above what's outside. You know, it can make a big difference, and it will definitely heat up a car. It comes with great responsibility, sleeping with candles. That can be very, very dangerous. As a former professional firefighter, the 2 most dangerous things that I saw that resulted in the most home fires were space heaters. Well, 3 things: space heaters, wood stoves that weren't properly maintained, meaning people burnt green wood, which caused creosote to build up on the inside of the stove, which caused chimney fires, which are very frightening and difficult to put out. Do you know how to put out a chimney fire? A quick way that works every time? A chimney fire, if you don't know, is a frightening thing. So I don't know about East Coast Man, what he's going on. He likes to brag about East Coast Man as far as, from what he tells me, he does everything perfect and he only burns hardwood and single digit moisture content and all that. So I'll go ahead and we'll go with that. But out here, we have to burn a lot more softwood, primarily Douglas fir. Douglas fir has a lot of resin in it, which is not a problem if it's dry. It's no problem at all. It burns very good. It's a very fine firewood. Good BTUs, good all around wood. If you burn it green, you get a lot of smoke because the combustion, there's so much water in the wood that the fire is spending a lot of its efforts of evaporating that water rather than producing heat. And so that unburned fuel, which is in the smoke, when you see smoke, it's unburned fuel. That's an inefficient fire. As it goes up the chimney, it cools and it sticks to the side. You get this black layer of creosote. And over the years, if you don't clean out your chimney, because you're a Philistine burning green wood, it builds up. Well, you get a good hot fire going in there, and it'll usually happen in the middle of the night. That will ignite. And what you basically have is a rocket mass, rocket mass, whatever. You got a frickin' jet that's shooting flames 20 feet out the top of your chimney and making a terrible racket. It's pretty spooky, scary. This usually happens in old homes that haven't followed codes, or people put illegal wood stoves in and they don't have double wall pipe. So the pipe gets hot, it catches the framing on fire, and now you have an inferno. That happens a lot. The candles are another one. People fall asleep with candles. They fall over, they burn out, they're very dangerous. And then the space heater. You get a space heater that shorts out too close to the curtains, too close to the couch, and then the house is on fire. Those are the three things. The UCO lanterns are nice because that flame is contained inside. And I'm not recommending this, but in the event it were to be knocked over, let's say you were trying to keep warm with it in a car, or you fell asleep and knocked it over, it's less likely to start your house on fire than an open flame. So those are good. But the gas lanterns are good as well. It's nice to have two options. You should have both. These are going to put out a lot more light. They're going to be quicker and better, and they're not going to get blown out. They're just, I would probably go with a dual fuel lantern first, and then backfill that in with a UCO, the 3 candle version. All right, we're going to wrap up our stream. Thank you guys for the reminder. We have a super chat from Mr. Chris Hall. Shout out to you, Chris. Very generous of you. Thank you for being supportive and for your faithfulness. I appreciate that, Chris. He says, your channel has helped me move from NYC to Florida to start working on building my hard skills. Planning on purchasing some raw land to build my homestead in the next few years. Thank you, Cody. Yeah, I'd say that if you are set on being on the East Coast, that your best bet is just what Chris has done, is moving to Florida. As we know, as I'm fond of pointing out, Florida Man lives there. And Florida Man is completely ungovernable. And you have a very good governor there right now. That it seems to be. I don't know if he's a wool in sheep's clothing. Who knows? It's hard to trust any of those guys. But as far as governors go, he seems to be holding the line. That's going to be a good spot. Land, I heard, is getting expensive there. I would imagine, because so many people are moving there because of the favorable economic environment. But I would imagine, I'm guessing, if you get up there in Piggly Wiggly country, or up around in the interior to the north, that you're going to have probably a lot less of that, and it's going to probably be more affordable. But know this about Florida, that it is dependent upon air conditioning. Air conditioning is a necessity there, not a convenience. How I know that is I lived in South Florida for a year. It is a very difficult environment to live there in the best of situations when you have AC in the summer months. If you want to know how bad it was, you go read the early the journals, which I've read extensively, from the early explorers that first went down there, the first white men that tried to settle that country before the swamps were drained and through the Everglades and when they had to deal with the Seminole Indians and such. And these were tough guys that some of them had experience of exploring all over the place and they were not soft men. They knew what they were getting into. And even them, most of them were pushed out with their tail between their legs, saying that this is the most unhospitable land that we have ever experienced. It is impossible to live here. Well, it's been civilized now, but there's also air conditioning. Once that air conditioning is gone, or the power is interrupted, that's going to be a very, very difficult environment to survive in. Just be aware. Be aware. Not that you can't do it, but just be aware. We have a super chat from Ryan Z. Shout out to you, Ryan. And Ryan writes that he took his first cold shower today. Mrs. W this will be her third day. I told my wife about it. Her response is not fit for an audience. I'm in. Stick to it, Ryan. Stick to it. Trust me. It's very important. The cold shower is important, but that's half of it. The other half is you need to get in and do the Wim Hof breathing method with it. Now, I've done it before the shower and I've done it after the shower. I can't say that there's much difference. I don't know about that. I've just started I'm only 2 weeks into it myself. But you don't need to buy anything. You've already got the cold shower. You're already saving money. And tell your wife that you're going to be taking cold showers for the next 12 months. And the money that you're going to save from filling up that 50 gallons of the hot water heater every day or twice a day, that you are going to be setting that aside to purchase a new rifle. You tell her that I told you that was what you could do. That's what it's going to be. So if that doesn't get you motivated, then nothing will. But go on YouTube. You know, you can buy the course. I bought his 10-week course. I'm not saying what to do. If you feel fit to do it and you need that to motivate you, you want to really do everything you can do to get feeling better and more energy, then do that. But if you're just getting started, you want to try it out, do what I did before I bought it, did it for a week, is just go there and follow, just type in Wim Hof breathing method. He'll have where you go through 3 cycles where you'll hyperoxygenate your body. Follow him, put it on your phone, and you go through 3 cycles. It takes about 3-4 minutes. Do that as well. Do that with the shower. Those two are important to do together. The shower is only half of it. But come back here and give me reports. All you guys that are doing it, I'd love to hear back on that. I liked it. Misery loves company. We have a super chat from Mr. Ted Smith. Shout out for you, Ted. Ted says, thank you for all the content. What's the favorite video you've ever made? That's easy. My favorite video I've ever made is Mrs. W and I cutting down the big fir tree with the crosscut saw. That's my favorite video. When I look back on the production of it, it's cringy. It's pretty terrible, but it brings a tear to my eye every time I use it. Without a doubt, that's my favorite video. That's a good video. We have a super chat from Mr. Ted. Oh, sorry. Shout out to you, Ted. We have a super chat from Harduck. Man, I have to be careful. I'm not an educated man. You guys might be trolling me here, and I might say something that I regret. Hardducking. We'll just go with that. He says, your testimony was similar to mine. Seems unique. I didn't really want to go up to the altar. It was like I was picked up and pushed to the altar. Yeah, boy, it's true. I know you and I are the only ones that can really understand that, what that was like. And it was as real as the hair on my head. I was completely resolved. You know, when that altar call went up, I was thinking, well, what I've heard is very interesting. Seems to make a lot of sense, but I need to do more research. I need to investigate this some more. You know, I was engaged the logical lizard brain, not the emotion. We need to, gentlemen, we need to put away the critical thinking. We think way, way too much. We think about things we have no control over. We stress and we worry and we stew. It destroys our health. It destroys our peace. It makes us anxious, fearful. It's awful. You've been lied to. The man is not to use his critical thinking. The critical thinking is a computer that needs to be used to solve individual problems that you may be dealing with, working on a particular thing for a brief moment, but our day-to-day understanding and how we react and how we walk according to the gospel and how we receive the urging of the Holy Spirit is through the emotion right here in the solar plexus. Right here, you can feel it. You can feel it. Those emotions start here, they turn to thought, and those thoughts need to turn to action, and we need to react quickly. That's when you do it. A person connected to God can react much more instinctively and quicker. Some people say 7 times quicker than someone that takes a moment to think logically, to think it out, and then misses an opportunity. When you talk about elite men that are being trained and working at the highest levels, SAS, British Special Air Service, SAS guys, Top Gun pilots, for example, they are taught to embrace and to use that instinct to make decisions. Because what the militaries have determined, and not everyone has the ability to do it, but not everyone can do those jobs. That's why so few are able to do to get into those positions. They teach them to use that gut, that reaction, that instinct, which is 7 times faster, some people say, than if you stop to think about it. And in a situation of life and death where decisions that are made in fractions of a second could determine life or death, that is the difference between, that's the old term, there's the quick and the dead. We've heard that in gunfights and different things, there's the quick and the dead. The man who reacts to instinct makes the right decision and will oftentimes save his life or act quicker in life-threatening situations than the men who won't. That's God's instinct, that's God's spirit, and that's what has been trained out of you from the time you were in kindergarten till all through school. All society tells you need to be a logical, critical thinking man. No, you don't. No, you need the critical thinking maybe 3 or 4% of the time when you're solving a problem and you need a computer in your brain. But when it comes to day, who should I react, who should I talk to, how should I react, what should I do? Trust the emotion. Trust the emotion. The emotion turns to thought, and that thought needs to turn to action, and act immediately and decisively. That's how you do it. That's why God's people are going to have an advantage in the final days, because those of us I'm not good at it. I'm overcoming that as well. That is a new revelation that I've understood quite recently, that I struggle with, that I'm trying to build. That God has shown me that that's the way you need to be. You're going to need to be able to react immediately. When I tell you to go, you need to go. Life and death is going to be hanging in the balance in the future, and you won't have time to try to reason and think it out. If you try to reason and think it out, you'll make the wrong decision. You'll follow the analytical, and you'll lose that opportunity. The man that reacts instinctively will have the advantage. That's proven science. That's above reproach. We have a super chat from new member, Sec Move PUZ. Shout out to you, and you'll be enjoying Mr. Overton's 940 Benchmade as a new badge. I have also, for members, just quick side note here before we wrap up. This morning I did a behind the scenes video just for you guys that will upload in the next hour after the live stream is over. I've got it up, I've got it on my computer. It's going to go up, something you might enjoy, so look for that. I'm going to be doing more of that. I have a phone, has a good camera on it, and I'm going to share stuff with you. I'm going to make sure you guys know that if you have a request or want to see something, let me know in the comments, and if I can do it, I'll make it happen for you. It won't be highly edited, but it'll just be as a thank you to you guys. We have a super chat from Sec Move. Oh, we already got that. Sorry, thank you. Shout out to you. He says, I've been watching your channel for a while now. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy you being here, and thank you for faithfully supporting us. We really appreciate that. We're here. We're able to do this because of you guys. We have a super chat from Sec Move P. Am I going to read this 3 times? We have a super chat from Abdur Rahim. Thank you for your faithfulness. And Abdur writes that he's been watching for years, since sometime last year. It's been really interesting. Thank you for the good content. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And Mr. Roger One Bubble, good to see you back. He's been with us for 2 years. He writes, do you like the Clarkson Farm series? So funny. I watched the first couple. I watched 1 or 2 episodes of that when he bought that big tractor. He bought that big Lamborghini tractor, and I thought it was really good, and I just kind of forgot about it. I don't watch TV too much anymore, I might need to go back and revisit that. I was really excited for the Grand Tour series because Jack and I were such a fan of the Top Gear series. It was absolutely brilliant. And then the Grand Tour was horrible. The Americans got a hold of it and turned it into the trash that American TV is. The British have always had really good, we've always watched, we haven't watched a lot of TV. We haven't had a TV since we had Jack. But we watch the shows on a computer, and in the rare times that Mrs. W and I have done that, we always go and watch stuff from the BBC. Those series, British television and shows, they don't insult your intelligence. They are very intellectual, they have good stories, they have good character development, they're clever, they're witty. The British enjoy and appreciate intelligence. They pride themselves on that. And it shows in their programming. Where the American stuff is just built to the lowest common denominator. The monster truck crowd is just trash. And it's just insulting. The more explosions and the more drama, I mean, it's unwatchable. It's been unwatchable for decades. So unfortunately, when those three presenters came to the U.S. and worked for Amazon, it's deteriorated into American trash. And so it kind of put me off. I guess I was projecting that onto that farm show. But I'll go back. We'll have to watch it. I'll put that back on my list. All right, gentlemen, we're going to wrap up. Mr. Ryan Z, our newest fledgling member. Shout out to you. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your support. It's always fun to hang out and talk about these things together, and we learn from each other. Remember, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. What I want you guys to do, if you haven't done it already, how many people we have here? Our live stream is growing. We're growing a little bit. I think if I can be consistent here, and it's easier for guys to know, hey, you show up when you know I'm going to be here rather than just doing random things, I think that's the solution. Be here, hang out with us. What I want you guys to do in the next 24 hours is get on YouTube and watch some Wim Hof videos. Watch his documentary. Watch the video of him, the cold shower for beginners. Do the Wim Hof breathing method. 15 minutes you can have this done. You can set it aside. And do it in the morning. Get started and do this with me. Do it. And one thing that I have found, I'll close with this, that I've struggled with in the past is prayer time. Not necessarily the time. I've been able to find the time in the morning, but I have not been able to keep my mind focused. My mind starts to wander. C.S. Lewis, as I'm so fond of quoting, says, at this moment in the morning when you're trying to get your day started, and you want to spend time with your Father, and you know the importance of connecting so that you can have that assurance and that peace throughout the day and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. You have to maintain friendships. Just because you were baptized or you gave your heart to the Lord years ago and you have neglected spending time with your Heavenly Father, He's a person too. He's like us. We're made in His image, in His very image. The things that are the emotions that we have, the feelings, the fear, the pain, the love, the joy, pleasure, these all came from Him. Sometimes we can dehumanize Him. I don't mean to be irreverent, and that's probably the wrong word, but it's the only thing that comes to mind, thinking that He's so far above and beyond us that He doesn't have to deal with these difficulties that we do. But He showed us that He does. When Christ came down, He suffered from the same thing. He wept over His people. We read how He talked to the Old Testament, how He would cry over Israel, how they would, why won't you return to me? I wish that you would come back to me. I would be like a mother hen that covered you and protected you with my wings. Why won't you come? I've been called. Why won't you come? You have to maintain friendships. If you stop calling your best friend, neglected him, didn't return his phone calls, didn't return his texts, didn't acknowledge him on his birthday or special events, that friendship would wither and die. There's got to be reciprocity. It's important to connect. And I found personally that the cares of the world, what C.S. Lewis said, that time when you in the morning before work and you have all these things and all of the pressures of life going on, that these obligations, these responsibilities, they come at you like rushing lions for your attention. And it's hard to funnel that out. It's hard to focus on, trying to connect with your Father when you've got work looming and the clock is running, and I get it. It's very difficult, and sometimes you just think, oh, this is pointless. I don't even know if he heard me because I wasn't involved. I was going through the motions. I have found, for me, a solution for that is from the cold shower to the meditating and the relaxing and the breathing that goes through that. Do it someplace private, go in your closet, whatever. I even take my cap off, my wool cap, and I pull it over my eyes so it's dark. So I can close my eyes and I can focus on listen to my breath. And Wim's really good at kind of helping you to chill and to relax, get yourself calmed down. Then after 20 minutes of this, then you're very relaxed, your body feels good, and you go right into that prayer time. You'll be very focused. It's as if it's all one. It is as if that's how you prepare yourself to meet your Father, meet your Creator. And you'll find that you don't need half hour. You can say what you want to say. You can have that dialogue. You can show Him the respect of giving Him your best, which is the best time of your day, which is your morning, giving Him your attention. And that's been a great blessing for me, that side of it. I haven't spoke to that before, and I'm just now kind of figuring it out, but that's the routine that I'm getting in. A half hour, you can do your cold shower, you can do your Wim Hof breathing. Once you do that for a week, start moving into some of the stretching, get your body sorted out, get your body moving again, and if you're all stoved up in injuries, he can really help with that. I'm convinced of. He's helping me tremendously. And then go right into your devotional time. And man, it'll change your life. It'll change your whole day, and you'll be amazed how much energy you have. Cold shower is good, but the trifecta is the cold shower, the Wim Hof breathing method, and then connecting with God. That's your homework. That's your homework, beloved, for the next 24 hours, and I'll be here tomorrow, and know that I'll be doing it and receiving those benefits. Because the world is a hard place, and it's getting harder, and I don't want to go through it without the help of my Father. I want to be on the right side. I want to win. I want to see you guys in the kingdom as well. All right, goodness. We'll take one last super chat. We have a super chat from Mr. Brandon Aga. Shout out to you, Brandon. Brandon says, "Can you talk about what medication to be? Can you talk about what medication to be prepared?" Man, I don't know. Let me think on that. Brandon. We've done a few things, not a lot. I have my good friend, in my neighbor who I snow bike with, and him, his son, and Jack, we all go together sometimes, is him and his wife are both doctors, and he's a surgeon. And we've talked about, he's of the same mind. He's prepared mind as well, but he's a little bit getting started a little bit later than I am. And he's been asking, what should I do with my resources? Should I be buying fuel? Should I be buying this and that? We talked about it, and he decided, get a good basic set of stuff that I recommended. But I said, I think your time would be best spent on stockpiling and collecting things that could be used where you really shine. He was telling me that a lot of things expire at the hospital, and they throw things out, and bandages and different things that are perfectly good, and he's been squirreling those away and collecting them. So my plan has been, they're becoming close family friends of ours now. We're in each other's house all the time, and we know each other's kids, and it's a very nice friendship, is to kind of lean on him on them on that, where he can lean on me on other things. We can lean on each other, because I'm not the expert on that. I grew up very antagonistic towards, or not untrusting of, hospitals and Western medicine, and I've never been on any medicine. I've never had vaccinations or anything like that. Never been on anything like that, apart from just some minor painkillers for major surgeries and different things I've had. But that was always just short term. So I don't know. I'm not. I don't depend on it. I don't require it, and I haven't really put any stock into it. That's really the only answer I could give you. Maybe you would, it's difficult. it's difficult to give that sort of advice when you're ignorant about it. And I don't know doctors, I might put them in a bind. I know we have some of our mods here are docs, and I don't know what they're able to do either, if they could give advice over computer or not. That's kind of, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But that's what I'm doing. Oh, we got one last one. We have a super chat from Hoster Leon. I think I pronounced that wrong. He says, shout out to you. He says, what do you think of the 10X health system? I don't know what that is. What is the 10X health system? I'll have to look into that. I'll be back. I'll be doing a little editing. I'll clip some of these, some of today's video, and I'll type that in and see. I don't know. Maybe I can speak to that in the future. I'm ignorant about it. I've never even heard of it. I don't know. I can't speak to it. All right. I have to go, gentlemen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your faithfulness. Please keep us in your prayer. Remember that the harvest is ripe and the workers are few, and God is looking for a few men who have the courage to stand in the gap and put on the armor of God. And there's going to be very, very few of us, and we will be in the fight for our life. It's not a physical fight. We don't advocate violence here. It is a spiritual fight. The good book tells us that we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Our battle is the spiritual battle, and it is heating up. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to the mods. Glad to see Overton back. Thank you to the middlemen. We sure appreciate you. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. And don't forget to go over to and download Owen's app. I'll be doing that, and looking forward to getting connected and watching his live streams again. Keep us in your prayers. May God bless you and your families. We'll see you tomorrow.